Michael B. Jordan sat in a brightly lit dressing room, the air thick with the scent of hot coffee from the next room and a faint whiff of disinfectant, a smell that always reminded him of the sterile precision of Hollywood studios. He looked in the mirror, adjusting the collar of his black shirt, when the door opened with a soft click. The show's host, Jimmy Carter, strode in with a wide grin, but his eyes slid over Michael with a strange glint, as if appraising a product on display. "Ready, Mike? It's gonna be a hot one tonight," Jimmy said, clapping him on the shoulder with enough force that Michael felt the pressure through the fabric, like a test of his resilience. Michael nodded, flashing a smile, but inside, something tightened. "Why always hot? Like I'm a fire they need to contain." His heart picked up pace, and he felt cold sweat on his palms, wiping them on his pants. The sounds from the corridor, laughter from assistants, the rustle of papers, seemed louder, as if the walls were closing in. He followed Jimmy onto the stage, where spotlights burned his eyes, and the audience buzzed like an ocean before a storm. Sitting in the guest chair, Michael tried to relax, feeling the heat of the lights on his skin. The show kicked off with jokes about his latest film, Black Panther, Wakanda Forever. Jimmy leaned forward, his voice booming through the mic with artificial warmth. "Michael, you play such a strong guy, the king of Wakanda. But tell me, what's it like being a black superhero in a world where superheroes are usually, well, paler?" The audience laughed, and the sound hit Michael like a blast of cold air from the overhead AC. His neck muscles tensed, and the scent of his cologne, fresh, with notes of sandalwood mixed with sweat. Is this a joke? Or a test? His thoughts swirled, anger flared like a spark, but he smothered it, smiling. "Well, Jimmy, I just play the role. Skin color doesn't define strength, right?" he said calmly, but his voice carried an edge, sharp as a blade. Jimmy leaned back, his eyes narrowing for a split second before he laughed. "Oh, sure. But imagine if you were white, you'd probably have an Oscar by now." Another burst of laughter from the crowd, and Michael's heart pounded like a drum in his chest. Cold sweat trickled down his back, and the leather chair under his hands felt slick. Shame. Anger. Why am I silent? He wanted to stand, say something sharp, but remembered his agent's words. "Don't react, Mike. It's showbiz." The pause in the conversation hummed like a shadow from the spotlight, and Michael just nodded, masking his shock with a smile. The show dragged on, but the tension grew. Jimmy pivoted to funny anecdotes. "Michael, you're so ripped, probably been training since you were a kid to stay out of trouble, like some, well, you get it." Whispers in the audience, the rustle of clothes as people shifted. Michael caught the bitter scent of Jimmy's coffee wafting across the desk. Shock morphed into confusion. Why me? He clenched his fists under the table, feeling his nails dig into his palms. "Jimmy, let's talk about the movie, not stereotypes," he said quietly but firmly, and the audience fell silent for a moment, as if holding their breath. The show ended with applause, but Michael walked off stage feeling humiliated. He sat in the dressing room, staring at his reflection, where shadows from the lamps darkened his face. This isn't the first time. But why does it hurt so much? Michael returned home late that night to his spacious Los Angeles house, where the air was cool from the AC, and the scent of fresh grass from the backyard seeped through the windows. As an actor, he was used to routines, morning runs in the Hollywood Hills, where sunlight glinted off the asphalt and the breeze carried eucalyptus, meetings with his agent, where they discussed roles, always with an undertone. "You're perfect for strong black guy parts." At home, he called his mother, her voice warm like a hug. "How was the show, baby?" she asked that evening, and Michael felt a tightness in his chest. "Fine, Mom. Just jokes," she sighed, her pause saying more than words. "You're strong, son." Don't let them break you. His friends were a lifeline. Ryan, the director he worked with on Creed, was always supportive. They met at a coffee shop the next day, where the aroma of freshly ground beans mingled with the scent of pastries. Ryan sat across from him, eyes serious. What happened on the show? I saw the clips. Michael gripped his cup, feeling the warmth of the ceramic. Jimmy made cracks about my skin color. Like it's funny. Ryan leaned forward. That's racism, Mike. Subtle, but real. The dialogue was short, sharp. Michael felt supported, but doubt swirled inside. Should I fight back? Risk my career? On the set of his new film, the environment was mixed. Colleagues, white actors, directors, smiled, but sometimes their gazes slid past him, as if he were scenery. During a break in his trailer, where the air was stifling from the heat, a young red-headed assistant said, Michael, you're so jacked. Must be genetics, huh? Her smile was innocent, but the words stung. He heard the rustle of papers in her hands, like rain. Another microaggression. No, it's work, he replied dryly, hiding anger behind a smile. Inside, shame for not reacting. But if I speak up, I'm the angry black guy. Another scene. A meeting with producers in a room lit by harsh lamps, shadows dancing on the walls. Michael, your role. It's perfect for you. You embody street strength. The producer's voice was smooth but loaded. Michael felt a cold draft from the vent on his back. Why street? I'm an actor, not a stereotype. They laughed as if it were a joke. The conversation cut off, but the tension lingered, like pressure in his temples. His place in the hierarchy was high but precarious. A star, but a black star in white Hollywood. Friends like Ryan supported him, but others avoided deep talks. Michael buried his feelings in work, but inside, he analyzed. This is the system. How do I survive? Smile and endure? The following days brought a series of microaggressions, piling up like dust in the air. At a press conference for the film, in a room with blinding spotlights, where the smell of sweat from journalists mixed with perfume, one reporter asked, Michael, what's it like playing a black hero in the Black Lives Matter era? Do you feel the weight? Her voice was sweet, but she cut him off. You're not from the hood though, right? Michael felt a tremor in his hands, gripping the mic, its texture cold and slick. Anger boils. Why do they dismiss my ideas? Inside, sadness, because it's not about me, it's their bias. Control it, Mike. Don't show weakness. The dialogue was sharp. I feel a responsibility to truth, not stereotypes, he said, but she moved to the next question, as if his words were empty noise. The audience whispered, every rustle of clothing like a jab. Later, in the hallway, a white co-star with a smile said, Don't sweat it, Mike. Just reporters. But his eyes avoided Michael's, as if afraid of contact. Michael felt a cold breeze from the open door on his face. Shame for staying silent. But if I snap, I'm the problem. Another scene. A dinner with the film crew at a restaurant, where dim lighting cast shadows that felt confining. The waitress served Michael's dish last, her movements quick, as if avoiding touch. A colleague joked, Mike, you cool if we order something ethnic? Laughter erupted around the table, and Michael caught the sharp scent of spices from his plate, bitter on his tongue. Inside, emotional struggle. I want to shout, but I hold back. It'll complicate things. Let's just eat, he said softly, with a hint of injustice. The psychological pressure mounted. At home, at night, he lay in bed, feeling the texture of the sheets, his heart racing from memories. He analyzed. Why do they act this way? Fear? Ignorance? Attempts at control, deep breaths, but anger seeped through like water through cracks. On set the next day, the director ignored his ideas. Mike, don't overcomplicate. Your role is strength, not philosophy. The interruption hit like a cold shower. Michael clenched his fists, feeling his muscles tense. Confusion. I want to act, but at what cost? Michael sat in his trailer, staring at his phone, where clips from Jimmy's show racked up views. Comments. He's overreacting, typical black guy. Always offended. His heart pounded faster, breathing quickened, and he felt a warmth in his body, like blood boiling. Enough. I won't stay silent anymore. An inner resolve flared like a fire in the dark. He would not hide. A symbolic gesture, he stood, looked in the mirror, his gaze radiating determination, shadows sharpening his features. At the next meeting with producers, in a room with cold air from the AC and the strong smell of coffee, Michael said calmly, I'm not playing stereotypes. Change the script, or I'm out. The pause hung heavy, their eyes widening in surprise. Inside, fear, but relief. This is a step toward dignity. He analyzed, I might lose the role, but I'll gain respect. I'll protect myself and others. The tension eased slightly, his breathing steadied, muscles relaxed. He felt warmth in his chest, the first awakening. Ready for action, he planned his next steps, talks with allies, public statements. This set the stage for a deeper conflict. Michael B. Jordan stood in the dim light of a studio conference room, the air heavy with the scent of stale coffee and the faint hum of an overworked air conditioner. The walls, lined with posters of past blockbusters, seemed to close in as he faced the producers, their faces a mix of unease and forced smiles. His ultimatum from the previous meeting, change the script or he walks, hung in the air like a storm cloud. The head producer, a middle-aged man with slick back hair, leaned forward, his voice smooth but patronizing. Mike, we hear you, but let's not make waves. This role, it's a big opportunity. People love you as the gritty, strong type. The words landed like a jab, and Michael felt a familiar tightness in his chest. Gritty. Strong. Code for black. The cold metal of the chair under his fingers grounded him, but his pulse quickened, and the faint smell of his own sweat mixed with the room's sterile odor. Inside, a storm brewed. They don't see me. They see a stereotype. He wanted to shout, to flip the table, but he held back, his jaw tight. I'm not asking for waves, he said, his voice low, deliberate. I'm asking for respect. My character deserves depth, not cliches. The producers exchanged glances, their silence louder than the hum of the AC. One of them, a younger woman with sharp eyes, scribbled something on her notepad, the scratch of her pen like nails on a chalkboard. We'll consider it, she said, but her tone lacked conviction. Michael's heart sank, but his resolve hardened. This is bigger than one role. This is about me. About us. Outside the room, the world felt no kinder. At a charity event that evening, held in a glittering ballroom where chandeliers cast golden light and the air smelled of expensive perfume, Michael mingled with industry elites. Their smiles were polished, but their eyes often darted away, avoiding his gaze. A studio executive, sipping champagne, clapped him on the back. Mike, you're killing it. The urban audience loves you. Urban. The word stung, sharp as the clink of glasses around him. He felt the cool stem of his own glass, the liquid trembling slightly in his hand. Why can't I just be an actor? He smiled, nodded, but inside, anger simmered, tempered by a growing clarity. I'm done playing their game. The microaggressions piled up. At a script read-through, the director, a wiry man with a permanent smirk, cut Michael off mid-sentence. Mike, let's keep it simple. Your character doesn't need all that introspection. The room fell silent, the rustle of script stopping abruptly. Michael's hands trembled under the table, the wood grained rough against his skin. He's dismissing me. Again. He wanted to push back, but the eyes of his co-stars, some sympathetic, others indifferent, pinned him in place. Got it, he said, voice steady, but inside, shame for staying quiet, fear of being labeled difficult. The smell of fresh paper from the scripts mixed with the faint tang of his own frustration. Later, at a bar with Ryan, his director friend, the dim lighting and clinking bottles offered a brief reprieve. The air smelled of whiskey and fried food, and Ryan's voice was a low rumble over the background chatter. Mike, you can't keep swallowing this. It's eating you alive. Michael gripped his glass, the cold condensation slick under his fingers. I know, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. But if I push too hard, I'm out. Blackballed. Ryan leaned closer, his eyes fierce. And if you don't, you're letting them win. You're Michael B. Jordan. You've got power. The words hit hard, like the thud of his heartbeat. Power. Do I? The conversation shifted something inside him, a spark of defiance. Michael's first active steps came quietly but deliberately. At the next script meeting, he arrived prepared, a revised character outline in hand. The room was cold, the AC blasting, and the smell of coffee was overpowering. He slid the document across the table, his movements steady despite the tremor in his hands. This is how I see my character, he said, his voice calm but unyielding. He's not just muscle. He's got a past, a family, dreams. Like me. The producers exchanged looks, the air thick with tension. The head producer frowned, his pen tapping the table like a metronome. This changes the tone, Mike. Michael leaned forward, his gaze locking onto theirs. Good. It should. His heart raced, but his voice didn't waver. Fear, but also freedom. The room felt smaller, the shadows sharper, but he stood his ground. The pushback was immediate. Later that day, the director pulled him aside on set, where the air smelled of sawdust and paint from the half-built props. Mike, you're making this harder than it needs to be, he said, his tone clipped, his eyes avoiding Michael's. The sound of hammers in the background punctuated the silence. Michael felt the heat of the studio lights on his face, his muscles tensing. I'm making it honest, he replied, his voice steady but sharp. Inside, doubt creeps in. Am I pushing too far? But he thought of his mother's words, of Ryan's encouragement, and held firm. The director walked away, muttering under his breath, and Michael felt a mix of dread and resolve. This is the fight. He started speaking out more, small but significant steps. At a panel discussion for the film, in a room buzzing with journalists and flashing cameras, he redirected a question about diversity in casting. It's not about checking boxes, he said, his voice clear, the mic amplifying each word. It's about telling real stories. My story. Our stories. The audience applauded, but he caught the tight smiles of the producers in the front row. The air smelled of sweat and anticipation, and his hands gripped the podium, the wood smooth under his fingers. I'm exposed now. No going back. The moment felt like a turning point, a crack in the system. The tension reached its peak at a high-profile industry gala, where the stakes felt higher than ever. The ballroom was a sea of black ties and glittering gowns, the air thick with the scent of champagne and ambition. Michael, dressed in a tailored tux, moved through the crowd, feeling the weight of every glance. A prominent studio head approached, his smile wide but cold. Mike, heard you're shaking things up on set, he said, his voice dripping with condescension. Careful, you don't want to be that guy. The words hit like a punch, and Michael felt his pulse spike, the heat of the room pressing against his skin. That guy! The angry black man. The clink of glasses and laughter around him felt mocking, the shadows of chandeliers flickering like judgment. Inside, A battle raged. Fear of losing everything. Anger at being reduced. He thought of the comments online, the whispers on set, the years of swallowing slights. His hands clenched, nails digging into his palms, and he felt the cool metal of his watch against his wrist. No more. He straightened, his voice steady but laced with steel. I'm not that guy. I'm Michael B. Jordan, and I'm done playing your stereotypes. The studio head blinked, caught off guard, and the crowd nearby fell silent, their eyes turning to him. The air felt electric, the scent of perfume now sharp in his nose. His heart pounded, but his gaze was unwavering, a fire burning in his chest. The room seemed to hold its breath, the contrast of light and shadow stark under the chandeliers. Some faces showed shock, others quiet respect, and a few disdain. Michael felt the weight of their stares, but also a strange lightness. I've said it. I've chosen. He walked away, his steps deliberate, the sound of his shoes on the polished floor echoing in his ears. Inside, he analyzed, this could cost me roles, connections. But it's worth it. I'm fighting for my dignity. The night ended with whispers trailing him, but he felt taller, his resolve a shield against the storm he knew was coming.